Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I never liked wedding buffets. Not because of the food, chafing dish chicken is chafing dish chicken in any decade, but because of what the long tables do to people. They turn you into a procession, ladling your portion of someone else's big day onto a plate you're trying not to drop. You're expected to smile at everyone, to tell at least one old story about the couple that makes the grandparents messed up and the groomsmen slap a shoulder. This one was at the Riverbend Lodge, the kind of place with string lights and a covered patio and boards of charcuterie so symmetrical they looked like a geometry lesson. It was a Saturday in May, the kind where the weather pretends it has manners. Our friend Kelsey had finally found her person, a kind, quiet high school math teacher named Dan who had the patience of a monk and the calves of a cyclist. Sarah and I had been married 25 years, long enough to have to find our names at the legacy table with the couples who know to bring ibuprofen in their jacket pockets. Our kids were there too. Hannah had flown home from Minneapolis where she's trying to make a living in a city that changes restaurants every week and apartment prices every hour. Matt had driven up from campus with his girlfriend, who was nice in a way that makes you hope it's real. My sister came with her husband, and Sarah's parents, Marilyn and Tom, were at a table near the dance floor with the other parents who watch everything because it's their job and because they can't help it. "Try the brisket," Sarah said, leaning in, her hand light on my arm. She looked good in the kind of green dress that would be called sage by people who spend more time in home goods stores than I do. "Walt says it's actually smoked, not just baked and lied about." "I'd trust Walt with meat more than I trust most politicians," I said. She laughed. "We're good at that kind of exchange, affection by way of sarcasm, an old couple's dialect." We did the dances you do. I smiled like a person in a toothpaste ad during the toasts that make you remember how much of love is repetition. Kelsey's sister cried in a way that made half the room look at the ceiling. Dan's best man told a decent joke about the time Dan tried to fix a leaky toilet and flooded a bathroom, and everyone laughed because it's safe to laugh at water. The DJ had the kind of beard that suggests a side hustle in coffee. The cake had 3 tiers and a scattering of flowers so artful it made me nervous to cut into it. Then, late enough that the kids were on the edge of drunk and the adults were on the edge of tired, a guy from the groom's side, someone I'd seen at the bar earlier mixing his beer with shots of something clear, grabbed the mic with the cheerful entitlement alcohol sells at a discount. "To love," he shouted, and everyone dutifully said to love. He looked at Kelsey. "To second chances." People said to second chances, because weddings turn us into echo machines. Then he swung his arm wide and grinned with the broad friendliness of a man who's never stayed for the cleanup. "And to the friends who kept love alive. Right, Sarah?" He said her name like it was one he'd practiced. My head turned before I could stop it, a body's muscle memory for someone else's voice. He winked at her. "That romantic trip to Colorado? Finally getting to be with the person you really love?" He paused for the laugh he thought he'd earned. "I mean, you're a legend for that. I don't even like hiking but that story made me buy boots." The room didn't go silent in the movie way. It went murmury, confused, the way a church gets when someone says the wrong prayer at the wrong time and the organist doesn't know which key to find. The DJ took a step forward like a lifeguard deciding if this splash is a problem. My sister's mouth made a hard line. Hannah put her wine glass down half an inch to the left of where she'd picked it up. Matt's eyes bounced from me to his mother and back like he was watching a tennis match he didn't want tickets to. I didn't say anything. I didn't stand. I didn't make a scene. I did what a man does when the floor shifts, mentally inventory the furniture. Colorado. Romantic trip. Finally with the person you really love. I knew where I was on the dates he was probably trying to be funny about. In January, my company sent me to a conference in Dallas. In March, I was in Cleveland for 3 days trying to explain to a logistics team why just in time doesn't mean never. In April, I was home except for the weekend I drove Tom to his brother's place to help him fix a roof. Colorado? We hadn't been to Colorado together since the kids were little and we took them to Estes Park and Matt cried because a chipmunk ran over his shoe. The guy laughed into the mic again, filling the space he'd created. "Kidding. Kidding," he said, with the helplessness of men who think kidding is an eraser. He looked at me like he wanted me to nod and make it okay. I looked back like a man looking at a mirror he didn't ask for. Kelsey, God bless her, moved like a ballerina and took the microphone. "Thank you, Steve," she said, which answered the one question I had about his name. Maybe we should save the inside jokes for the after party. The room laughed in relief that she had appeared with grace and a plan. The DJ started a song. People moved, people always move when the music tells them to. The moment tried to dissolve itself. "I'm so sorry," Sarah whispered. Her hand found my wrist, light, then gone. That was I have no idea. "Do you?" I asked. My voice surprised me. Calm, curious, like a man looking under a couch cushion for a remote he knows is somewhere. She swallowed. "David, not here." "Right," I said. "Not here." We stayed until the cake had been cut and the photos with the sparklers had been taken and the bride had hugged Sarah long and soft, and then we said our goodnights. In the car, the kids offered the kind of silence grown children offer when they don't know which parent is about to speak first. I turned on the radio and let the DJ make a joke about the Mariners. I dropped Hannah at my sister's because she was staying there. Matt and his girlfriend Ubered to their hotel. At home, Sarah went to the bathroom, closed the door, and stayed for a long time. I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water like a man waiting for a verdict he could survive. When she came out, she stood in the doorway, hairpins in her palm like tiny weapons surrendered. "It's not what he made it sound like," she said, the sentence people save for when they are about to admit it is what it sounded like. "Colorado?" I said. "When?" She looked at the floor like it had answers. "Last fall," she said. "October." "Last October I was in Cleveland," I said, because I am a man who checks his calendars. "You sent me pictures of Hannah's roommate's new puppy that weekend." "I did," she said, as if that mattered on its own. "I went to see a friend. It was stupid. It was not a relationship, it was a trip," I said. "A romantic one, according to Steve. With the person you really love." She closed her eyes like she was trying to shut something big behind them. "It was an old friend. From before us. We'd reconnected over email. We told ourselves we were just talking. We told ourselves we were good people who had hard seasons. She stopped. We told ourselves lies." "Name," I said. I don't know why it felt necessary. Maybe because names make things human and therefore beatable. "His name." "Mark," she said. "Mark Evans." I didn't recognize it. I was grateful for that small mercy. "How many times?" I asked. It felt like I had been issued a grim checklist and the best thing I could do was move the pen down the page. "Twice," she said. "Once here. Once in Colorado. I ended it in December." "And Steve knows because?" "They were in the same hiking group," she said, and for a second I hated the word hiking like it had been a person. I think he put two and two together and made it his business. I've barely talked to anyone from that group since. I didn't think it would ever." She looked up. "I'm sorry." There is a kind of anger you expect, hot, loud, cinematic. This wasn't it. This was cold air under a door in winter, the kind that seeps in and makes the whole room colder before you realize why. I took a breath and found I didn't trust it to steady me. "Tomorrow," I said, "we're going to separate the things we have to do from the things we want to say. Tonight, you will sleep in Hannah's old room. Tomorrow morning, we will look at your emails and texts and calendars. Not because I want to be a detective. Because I will not live with shadows in my house. We will tell your parents. Then we will call a counselor. Then, when we have a plan, we will tell the kids. They are not going to learn this in pieces from someone else's story." She nodded like a person receiving instructions from a competent surgeon. "Okay," she said. "Okay." I slept on the couch because a bed is a contract and I didn't have one I could sign. At dawn, I woke to the sound of the garbage truck and the first morning dove and the dog 2 houses down who always starts complaining about the day before anyone else does. I made coffee because that's what you do when you don't know what else to do. When Sarah came into the kitchen, she looked like a woman who had taken makeup off and hadn't put a new face on yet. "My phone," she said, holding it out. She put her laptop on the table. "I'll unlock everything." We did it like work. Inbox. Sent. Trash. Messages. Call logs. Calendars. The whole domestic surveillance tour that modern life makes possible. I didn't open anything I didn't need to. I didn't read the flirtations or the compliments or the sentences people write when they want to be immortal for 10 minutes. I looked for the dates, the specifics, the shape of the lie. She was telling the truth about the timeline. October. A long weekend. A hotel in Fort Collins with a fireplace that probably looked better on the website. I ended it, she said again, and showed me the email that said as much. Mark's reply was the kind of needy denial men send when they think persistence equals love. A few more messages from him in November. Nothing after Christmas. I wanted to call the man and read him his crimes in a voice that would humiliate him into a smaller life. Instead, I forwarded the thread to a folder labeled with today's date and closed the laptop like it might bite me if I left it open. "We're telling your parents this morning," I said. "Before church. I don't want them finding out by accident at coffee hour because Steve thinks shame is a hobby." She flinched. "Okay." Tom and Marilyn live 10 minutes away in a split-level house that has been painstakingly maintained since 1989. Tom was in the garage when we pulled up, polishing something that was already clean. He saw our faces and put the rag down. Marilyn met us at the door with the bright alertness of someone who has been worrying since she woke up. "The kitchen is where all real talk happens in that house." Tom sat. Marilyn stood and then sat because it felt right to sit. Sarah spoke. She didn't beautify it. She said, "I did this, and I'm sorry, and I ended it, and I understand if," and before she could finish, Marilyn reached across the table and took her hand. I don't know if it was forgiveness. I think it was motherhood. Tom looked at me, not at his daughter. "How are you?" he asked, because he's a decent man in the simplest way. "Angry," I said. "And also practical. We'll see a counselor. I don't want to be cruel in a way that sticks to the kids." He nodded. "Good," he said. Then he turned to Sarah and said, "You apologize to your husband every day until you run out of days." It wasn't harsh. It was a declaration like the Pledge of Allegiance. Marilyn said, "We'll help however we can. We'll keep our mouths closed where they should be. We won't make this harder." "Thank you," I said. It landed like a chair underneath me. We told the kids Sunday afternoon. I'd asked them to meet at our house for an early dinner because food makes bad talk survivable. They sat at the table they've spilled everything on since they were in high chairs. I kept it to nouns and dates and did not dramatize. "Your mom crossed a line last fall," I said. "I found out last night. We're going to counseling. She's staying at her parents' for a while. You do not have to pick sides. If you have questions, ask. If you want to be quiet, that's fine. You are not responsible for either of our feelings." Hannah stared at her plate for a long minute and then looked up with a face I'd seen on her since she was 5 and decided she could do a bigger slide at the park. "I don't want details," she said. "I want you not to make me manage your pain." "We won't," I said. Matt said, "Why Colorado?" in a bewildered tone that, for some reason, made all of us laugh once, one of those horrible laughs that comes out like a sneeze. Then he looked at his mother and said, "Are you sorry?" And she said, "Yes," and he nodded and said, "Okay, because at 20 you still think answers like that can hold." That week, we saw a counselor named Grace in an office with comp paint and a plant that looked like it had seen things and decided to keep growing anyway. Grace asked for facts and then for feelings and then told us to stop using the word always and start using the word today. She said remorse and repair and repetition like they belonged in the same room. She told Sarah to write me a timeline I could trust and told me to read it once and then put it away. She told us to set rules and mean them. "Trust is not currency," she said. "It's a practice. Do the practice." We built the scaffolding all the books and blogs say to build. Separate rooms. Open phones. Shared calendars. No contact with the other party, and if there was, I would see it first. Weekly sessions. 2 family dinners with the kids without relationship talk at the table. A rule about not bleeding on the people who didn't cut you. It was difficult in the ways people put in movies and also in the boring ways they never do. It was me learning to sleep in the guest room and not interpret the faucet drip as an omen. It was Sarah texting me a picture of her lunch because Grace said lots of small, boring honesty is better than one big grand gesture. It was me choosing, a dozen times a day, not to open the forwarded email thread again just to see if pain felt different when it was reread. It was me failing at that sometimes and then telling Grace I failed and having her say, "Okay," then put it down. Steve, of course, called to apologize. He'd gotten my number from Kelsey who, in her defense, didn't know exactly what had been said through the buzz of the room and the sound of her own happiness. "I didn't know," he said. "I was drunk. It was a joke. I thought." "You thought you were carrying a fun secret to a microphone," I said, and I was proud of my voice for not cracking. "Don't call my house again. Don't say my wife's name again. This is not your story." He started to protest. I hung up. It felt like turning off a light in a room I didn't need to be in. The kids handled it the way grown children handle most things they didn't choose. Hannah put her phone face down and showed up on Tuesday nights with grocery store flowers and a new joke she'd stolen off the internet. Matt texted me memes about middle-aged men discovering cycling. He and I went to the batting cages and hit balls until our hands hurt enough to count as feeling something. Sarah and I talked to them, together and separately, in as few words as we could get away with. Marilyn brought a lasagna that could feed a battalion and then called the next day to ask if I needed foil. Tom came over and helped me fix the basement door that's been sticking since winter. We didn't talk about Sarah until we were standing on the concrete by the washer, the hump covering us. "You're a good man," he said, which is the kind of sentence that feels like a coat being put on your shoulders when you didn't realize you were cold. I checked a credit card statement and saw the Fort Collins Hotel line. I printed it and put it in the same folder with the emails and the little list Grace had told me to write of why we try, the way Sarah held Hannah's hair when she had the stomach flu at 8, the way she taught Matt to parallel park by making him move trash cans around the cul-de-sac, the time she came to my father's bedside and sang the hymn he liked even though she couldn't carry a tune. I am not a romantic in the Hallmark way. But I believe in documentation. It keeps me from rewriting the past as a villain's origin story. We went back to Riverbend Lodge 3 months later for a different couple's anniversary party, just an hour, a polite showing. The lights were the same. The caterer had upgraded the brisket. Someone made a joke about speeches going on too long. I stood on the patio and watched the river that gives the place its name. Sarah stood beside me, not touching. We were in that strange middle people refuse to put in poems because it doesn't sell well. It was work and breath and a decision every hour not to be worse. "How are you right now?" she asked. A better question than "how are you" and a sentence Grace had taught us. "Angry," I said. "Less than yesterday." I tapped the railing twice with my knuckles, an old baseball habit. "Also bored." I smiled a little. Grace says bored is good. "Bored means safe," she said. "We like safe." "Safe is for the legacy table," I said. We didn't hold hands. We didn't promise anything we couldn't keep. We went home early and watered the geraniums because they were drooping and we didn't want to explain that to Marilyn. If you want me to make a list, I can, because a list is how I keep from turning into a man who performs grief instead of living through it. Don't let drunk men with microphones narrate your life. If you're going to ask for the truth, be ready to live with nouns. There are apologies and there is remorse. You can tell the difference by how quiet the room gets. Kids don't need the play-by-play. They need a schedule and food and the permission to be bored at dinner. Forgiveness is not an event. It's a muscle you have to train, or it atrophies. You can plant something after a storm. Not because it fixes the roof. Because the yard shouldn't pay for the leak. Last week, Hannah sent a photo of a dog she found at the shelter, 1 ear up, 1 ear down, and asked if we could foster just for a month. I said yes without checking with Sarah first. She said yes when she walked in and saw him on our rug. We named him River, because I am a sentimental man in secret, and because things flow and you stand by them and sometimes, if you're lucky, you learn to read the current. We're not back where we were, and maybe we don't want to be. We're not done, and that's the point. We are two people raising grown children and paying bills and remembering how to say goodnight without waiting for a certification from some authority. We are getting better at being boring on purpose. There's another wedding on our calendar for September. We RSVP'd yes with a note that said we will be your quietest guests. When the toasts start, I'll clap at the right times and check my pocket for ibuprofen and keep an eye on the bar. If a man I don't know reaches for the microphone with a wobble in his step, I'll hope the DJ has learned to be faster. And if he says Sarah's name, I'll be ready, not to perform, not to punish, but to put an arm across my own story and say, firmly and gently, we've got this one. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the AEN Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.